Have you found that cleaning these is such a
It kills me.
yeah?
It kills me.
The cloths are so bad.
It's terrible.
When you wipe with these bad boys, I feel like I'm just wiping more dust on, and then the inside of it as well is just so dirty. And then like I'll spray so much and then wipe, and it's like I've just wiped a layer of like dust on.
Yes. The smudging is next level on the outside, particularly.
Good notes.
Very small notes. You'll be very much relying on your glasses for those.
I can zoom in. It's OneNote. Do you use OneNote for your personal stuff?
No, I don't.
I highly recommend it. I've started doing it, and it's so good for organization. Like every book I read, I just OneNote it and do some summary notes in it.
How long have you been doing that for?
How long have I been reading or taking notes on reading?
Taking notes on reading.
Picked it up probably 2 years out of school. So how long have I been out of school for? 2 years ago. I've been out of school for 5 years, 4 years. But reading's good. If I read before I go to bed, I sleep so much better. Like even though the blue light stuff fix your sleep with blue light, I find it's more like the mindset it puts you in. Like it really relaxes your headspace and then helps you fall asleep easier as opposed to a million thoughts going a million miles after you've just been scrolling. Are you a reader, Sam?
I used to be a massive reader back when I was in primary school, when I was little. Little things to do.
Big primary school reader.
Massive, especially in the primary school I went to in the Wheat Belt, where the library we had was one small IKEA bookshelf with several levels of reading. I was the very top level of reading, the top shelf, and none of the other kids had got up to that level yet.
So you were the top dog of reading in primary school?
I very much was. I scored very highly on the reading and writing side of things.
As all primary school kids wish they were.
But it dropped off, unfortunately. I think I lost the passion for it.
You ran out of bookshelves?
Well, I had lots of my own books at home, which I'd absolutely race through, and I think maybe that was part of the problem. That I could never get enough books.
Books are expensive as well.
They are. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but growing up here, being an immigrant, we didn't have too much money for additional new books. So I would just race through anything that was available to me.
Well, welcome back to the Crooked Smile podcast, everyone. There's the talking intro we were discussing before this, but today I'm joined by Sam Marshall, who has a wealth of knowledge and experience, especially when it comes to what we were just talking about with moving around, growing up as an immigrant. So how old were you when you first migrated to Australia?
I was 5.5 years old when I first came here. It was a bit of a Hail Mary that was enforced upon me. My parents just decided off the back of a holiday of my mum's sister, who came over here and spoke so highly of Australia that they threw caution to the wind and said, we're actually just moving there. Let's go to Perth.
Where were you before?
I grew up in Yorkshire in England.
Nice neighbourhood? Not nice neighbourhood?
Let's call it a mixed bag.
Do you have siblings? No.
I have a half-brother, yes. He's 11 years my senior, so an interesting sibling dynamic there.
And he came with you guys?
He did not.
So you left with your mum and father, and your half-brother stayed there at 5.5, and the first place you moved to was the Wheat Belt?
No, the first place we set up camp, quite literally, was Karrinyup campsite.
Was it, mind me asking, was it legal migration?
It was legal migration, yes.
Then you didn't have anywhere to live, so you started off at a campsite.
That's correct, yeah.
Do you have many memories of that being only 5.5?
It's like being thrust into a totally alien world. You have to imagine. I'm not sure if you've been to the UK, Campbell.
No, not yet. One day to watch Arsenal play at the Emirates.
Oh, I'm so sorry that you're an Arsenal fan. Yeah, it's like being thrust into a totally alien world, but when you're that age, you don't really have a say in it. And you have all the trust in your parents. They know what's good for you, know what the plan is, I suppose. And so to come here and just be living in a tent and playing out with all of the other holiday makers and not having to go to school initially for the first period that we were here, while that all got sorted out, it was like this big adventure that I didn't really have the concept of what that would mean in the longer term. But a very exciting time for a child to feel like, looping back to the book side of things. Like I used to read The Famous Five. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that very, very old book series where, the kids would go away on holiday to some destination in the UK and there'd be some adventure awaiting them there. And that's very much what it felt like and how I conceptualized that. So I'm not sure there was a long-term plan at that time. It was just, let's go over there and let's figure it out as we go.
So that's a pretty big decision from your parents to make. Why do you reckon they made that decision then? Like to just kind of move and not even have a place to live and just go with it?
Well, it must have been an amazing recommendation from my auntie to get them to throw caution to the wind in that sense. But for a bit of context, at the time in the UK, and I'm sure still now, there is a big obsession with Australia and moving to Australia. So they have a lot of reality shows around people packing up, leaving the UK and coming abroad to Australia.
You reckon that was psyoped by some?
I think they were. I think they were influenced by the telly. Yes, very insidious.
So you come over here, you're in Karrinyup at the campsite. Is that where the shopping centre is now?
No, it's still there. The campsite's still there. I drive past it occasionally and reflect on what once was.
So how long were you there for?
In the campsite, probably about 4 months, I'd say, overall.
And then the first place you moved was?
Another campsite.
So how many campsites did you go before you finally had a house to live in?
That's a great question. I think probably 8 or 9 different campsites over the course of maybe 12 to 14 months.
So when was the first time you actually got a place to live here?
As in bricks and mortar house?
Yes.
Yeah, it would have been about after that 12 to 14 month period, because a lot of that wasn't just going between campsites in Perth or Perth Metro. That was also the time where we were adventuring and setting out across regional areas, seeing some regional campsites, had a lot of experiences out there. We went down south. We sort of did the loop around the main WA destinations. And then the very first apartment, proper bricks and mortar place to live was, I remember, in Jundana, near Mount Hawthorn.
Oh, that's a nice place.
It is a nice place. It's a lovely little neighbourhood. A good little coup from my parents after so long in a tent.
The audience probably get at what I'm saying is Sam has moved a lot of times growing up. You've moved 28, is it 28?
At the last count, it was 28, yeah.
28 times. And I'm kind of fascinated by this because I don't think many 29-year-olds have, 29. Don't think many 29-year-olds have moved the amount of years they've been alive.
Probably not, no.
What is that like with like the mental toll of constantly moving, especially kind of in those years where you're when you're an early teenager, kind of finding your own identity, but then you're constantly having your environment changed and reshaped over and over again. Does that have a massive toll or impact on who you become?
Definitely does. It's difficult to say because it's all I've ever known as well. You know, thinking back to even the longest I've ever lived in a place back in the UK before we come, I don't have many memories from that because obviously I'm too young and I only really start to remember things a couple of years in advance of moving. So talking to other people and seeing other people that have been in the same house for their whole lives, or they went to the same school consistently, they've known the same people their whole lives, that's an entire different concept to me. I don't know what that might look like.
Does it change the way you value relationships and interactions with people then because you have so many more?
Definitely, yeah. But also an appreciation for how transient relationships can be as well. You know that you can meet someone, you can be excellent friends, and you might just never see them again after 6 months. And that's been an experience I've had so many times throughout the whole journey.
Does that kind of discourage you from doing that?
I don't think so.
Everyone needs to cherish it and embrace it and kind of like take the positive out of the negative of that situation.
That's right. And not be too sad when you do move on or you do drop a relationship. It doesn't work for the two of you anymore. I think some people tend to hold on to that even if it's doesn't make sense anymore.
Do you reckon it would be scary though, the thought of that kind of desensitizing you to relationships? Because we've had, and it's a very, very far or broad reach as an analogy, but kind of similar situation. We've had a urologist on who was talking about penises and how he works on penises. And he goes, I've seen so many penises now in my life that I'm just so desensitized to them. It's like a foot or an arm. It's a normal body part when I see one. Is that the same with you in kind of relationships?
That is not where I thought this part of the conversation was going, but I suppose it is. Yeah. It just becomes a part of life that you have to accept, and you see its role, and you just appreciate it for what it is.
Do you reckon you ever got used to it, or do you reckon it's impossible to get used to that sort of lifestyle?
I definitely did get used to it. I think it defines how I experience relationships now.
Well, another concept is tell me, is your house a home? It's about the people versus the place. I guess for you, it's been the people then because of the amount of places. And what would you define as a home? I guess is where I'm getting at.
So when we talk about, moving house 28 times, I haven't moved house 28 times. I've moved my main location 28 times because some of those were simply moving campsites. It's the same tent. It's the same physical structure. It's still put up in the same way. It's still got the same people in it, but it's in a slightly different spot. Different people around, different environment. That becomes a new home.
How many different people do you reckon you've lived with now?
It's not as much as it sounds based on how many times I've moved around because I have stuck with the same people. And I've gone between my parents, obviously living with them, and then moving out just before I was 18. Living with the same person for then 7 or 8 years after that, and then now my current partner, moving in with her family, and then a house on the way with her as well. So although there's been a lot of change in that environment and that sense of home, the people have been the most consistent part of that.
And do you think that's helped?
Definitely. I don't think I would have made it through without having some sense of at least stability in the relationships or the people that you experience that sense of home with.
With now having your own house that you're building or renovating, are you excited about that? Are you scared about that because you've never had that consistency? How do you think you're going to go there?
It doesn't feel real. It still doesn't. I go there, I see the walls going up. I see they're starting on the roof. I see my street number. I see the community I'm about to call home, and it still doesn't feel real to me. And to go back to your question previously, that's the side effect of moving around so much and never having that sense of concrete stability in that it's trained my brain, I think, to go, well, in 6 months' time, it's going to be somewhere else. So having a home for the next 15, 20 years is an alien concept to me entirely.
To be able to make that step towards being ready for that, you'd probably have to undergo quite a lot of personal change in sort of your lifestyle, your values, and where you see yourself. When did that start?
It's a great question. It, to be frank, was something I was never certain I would achieve. And I think that, again, is another side effect of the constant transformations of space, never having that stability. It doesn't feel like a possibility until it is. And even now that it is a possibility and it is something that is happening concrete right in front of me, my brain's just still can't grasp it.
Well, the other thing is, I guess, with all that moving around, it must make it pretty hard to find consistent work at the same place or to have kind of the same sort of, well, unless you're like a remote teacher, I guess, or like one of those sort of industries where if you go out to the wheat belt, there's always work. Like having a photog business is pretty niche. How do you find that and decide that's what you want to do, and how's that work with the constant moving?
That's an interesting question. I think with the photog business, the beauty of it was that no matter where I was based, the work would always be there. So it was always around Perth, Perth Metro at very least. And there's a couple of instances where I go outside of that, but wherever I was based, I was available and I could get there.
And starting your own photog business?
Yes.
How does one start their own business? I'm interested. I love the nitty gritties of like, from an idea and a concept to making it something tangible in the real world that actually works. I think there's a lot of steps that have to go into place to do that. And generally when you ask people these sort of questions, they'll just say, oh, it was just hard work and I thought about it forever and I started doing it. But people don't actually realize to get something in motion, there's so much thought, planning and preparation, and then action of actually doing it to get it in fruition. So how do you decide you want to start a photog business and how do you get that running?
Stumbled into it. The answer to the very first question there is accidentally. So just by circumstance, we started out throwing house parties when I left school. And
making money off that?
Not yet. So the house parties themselves were just, we'll call it connection building, let's say. But at the time, social media was ramping up. I'd say it was getting towards its peak when this was an era where people were still actively wanting to be tagged in as many photos on Facebook as possible. They want to share as much as possible. And so there was this booming demand, rather, for people to attend parties and take photos and make it look like everyone's having fun. And, you know, obviously the host wants that because they want to be seen on Facebook of having that big party. And this is after the Corey Worthingtons of the world had already come out and made the news and all of that. And so
Project X.
Exactly, right? So similar sort of time. And at one of the house parties that we had thrown and organized, I saw a couple of guys that had been hired to just walk around and taking photos. Everyone's getting involved with them and all having great fun. And the host turned to me and said, "Sam, you got a camera, right?" And I did. I did have a digital camera. I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know what all the buttons were. And they asked me to take photos at the next event. And I thought, how hard can it be? We got to the next event and it turns out quite hard. The photos were absolute shit. Terrible. But you have to go from there.
You strike me as the kind of person that when you try something and it sucks, you don't get deterred from it. You then get obsessed with perfecting it.
Absolutely. Because especially when you're an absolute amateur at something, the amount of improvement you can get over a short amount of time is quite staggering.
And the concept of it is also exciting. Like, it's exciting learning something new and figuring out how to do it and being grounded and starting from day one.
Definitely. But let's not get things twisted. When I'm 17, 18, the desire to do it wasn't necessarily rooted in perfecting camera techniques. The desire for it was, hey, I'm going to be able to go to really cool parties.
Money
and I'm going to get involved and I'm going to get paid for it. And this is a pretty sweet arrangement. And you know what? Maybe that's not a bad thing, because then it does lead to the mastery and it does lead to the need to be a perfectionist in the craft.
So how do you go from parties to doing weddings and actual events and turning into a business?
Network.
From the parties?
From the parties. You'll have people all around you throughout. You're the center of attention, you know, or at least back then. Everyone wanted to be involved. Everyone wanted to be seen, and people would really value your presence there. And if you can bring the sense of enjoyment to life through your snaps, everyone wants a part of that. That's such a value that you bring to the table. And if anyone there, and I guarantee if someone's out at a party, they probably go to other parties or they probably host other parties. And so naturally, you'll attract people who also are hosting events and want that same sense of enjoyment captured and then shared with other people as well.
You're doing these photo gigs at nighttime. What are you doing to fill your days then? Because generally parties are always late at night on the weekends and stuff. How do you fill your week?
At the time, I was keeping my consistent wage coming by working at a few chemists in the city, which I really, really enjoyed as a day job, and having a bit of stability there to at least know, hey, you get X amount of hours per week. And, I just moved out of the home at the time as well. So having that stability to be able to pay the rent's great, but then having the photo income on top of that is just a bonus, or at least that's how I thought of it at the time.
Was there a moment in time where the photo business became consistent enough to do it full time instead of doing the chemist work?
I never wanted to do it full time. I can't exaggerate enough how exhausting it can be to be constantly in that mental state of being the life of the party, because people will mirror you. People will mirror your energy. And the best way to get those moments that are worth sharing out of an event like that is to mirror that energy and almost take it up 50%. So you've got to be 120% yourself in order to get everyone else up to that. And then you see that through the pictures.
But then do you find you're becoming someone you're not?
I think it helped me realize who I was rather than putting on a mask. And it's almost that concept of, don't wait to be the person you want to be, just be them.
Something I've been thinking about a lot lately is the more you realize who you are and what you want, the less you care about what everyone else thinks. So kind of shaping that identity and then pivoting to where you are now. How do you do that? And was it easier because you're so used to change from the early years of moving all the time? Absolutely.
And the constant pivoting of location, school, circumstance, whatever, makes that a staple of my life. Having stability of employment, relationships, home, makes me feel uneasy in a sense, almost like it's something I need to or have been learning to be comfortable with, because my brain's just like, hey man, it's been a while now. Like, things haven't changed. What's going on? And in terms of embracing new opportunities, you just run with it. You just learn to run with it. And even if it's something completely out of left field that you never thought you'd end up doing, all of a sudden it's been 7 years.
So how do you pivot out from that and decide I don't want to do this anymore and kind of change your career?
Well, I had the benefit of the photo business was never something I needed. It was something that supported me for sure, and certainly was something I needed at the time in terms of character. But the pivot towards marketing, studying at university, and then getting that full-time job off the back of that in that discipline is more of a step towards the maturity and the stability that being a more mature person demands.
So you think you kind of needed to go through that phase of all of that growth with the photog business and with the day job and having all that work, and then constantly networking and kind of discovering who you are through these photog events to realize I want something a bit more structured. I want this discipline. I want the self-gratification of committing to something long-term and reaping the sort of fruits of your labor from that.
That's spot on. Yeah, absolutely. And it was something I definitely needed, because I learned so much about myself and who I could be off of that. But as with everything, it has its time. And once it's filled its purpose, you also have to be able to let it go.
To decide, okay, I'm going to go to uni now and I'm going to get this degree and get this job. What sparked that?
50% of it, I think, would be because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what the path or the journey is. And so after it would have been 19, 20 odd years of instability, not being certain what's around the corner or what life's going to look like in 6 months, I think it was a bit of a turning point. Like, hey, I really got to start maturing into this concept, and I got to start learning to commit to things long term and start to do some long term planning, because all of this bouncing around is fun and trying out new things is fun, but we got to learn to lock things in occasionally.
Before we get into the uni stuff and then getting the consistent job, obviously you would have gone through some hardships. Were there any lessons you learnt from these hardships that have helped shape your life?
No matter how painful it is, no matter what fate casts your way, however the dice rolls, you have to roll with it.
Okay, here's the most generic question, but it's gold if you have a good answer. If you could look back at your youth now and give yourself any advice, what would it be?
I think I would give myself reassurance as opposed to advice. I'd say, you'll figure it out.
Right. So you just let yourself figure it out on your own. And
I think thinking of the question a slightly different way, if we were to say, what would you need to hear from your older self if you were your younger self? That's exactly what I would want to hear, that I'll figure it out.
Because that's kind of what you're hoping, I guess.
Yeah. Well, when you don't have a sense of concrete stability, something to rely on, brain's always looking for it. It's always like, hey, when's it going to run out?
Well, I guess as well, you got to be in a good place now to be able to say that as advice to your younger self.
Yeah, but that's come through hardship. Without living through all of those instances, you can't build the resilience that's required to be able to confidently say, well, actually, you'll roll with it.
It's an interesting one with hardship, because it's like, obviously they're horrible and no one wants to go through bad or tragic hardships, but at the same time, that's where you have the most growth. That's where you really find out who you are as a person. And that's how you kind of, when shit hits the fan or something's at rock bottom, like that's when you really find the most out about yourself. And that's something I love about, and I know it's not the same level, but running is just like when you're running and you're hating it or you're really pushing yourself in the gym or those sort of things, you kind of get that little bit of experience where it's like, I could stop right now and be completely okay, or I could push through this and really grow from not only the physical benefits from it, but the mental benefits of the current physical toll and mental toll I'm placing on my body. A lot of word salad, but I hope that made sense to you, Sam.
100%, and I could not agree with that point more. It's in the moments where we go beyond where we thought our limits were, where we realize where our limits actually lay, and it's way further than at the moment we might think. And reflecting on the comment about hardships, it's only a hardship in the moment when you're experiencing it. After that, it becomes experience, or it just is, or rather, it just was. It's something that occurred, and now you're fine. You're still here. You're still breathing. You can now think on it. You can reflect on it.
In the least hippie way, we're just on a massive rock in the middle of nowhere.
That's it. That's it. Just drifting through space, man.
So now you've got a bit of stability in your life. Working, you've got a good job, you've got a degree, you've got a good stable relationship, and you're building a home. In terms of discipline, I know you've recently started journaling every day. Talk to me about that.
Journaling every day is transformative in understanding and processing hardships, or even the little hardships of the day, and also being able to reflect on your mentality outside of your own head.
So what are the benefits you've been finding from the journaling?
A greater sense of objectivity on things that are subjective in the moment. Now, what I mean by that is no event, no action, no word, nothing has inherent power over you. It's only your estimation of whatever it is that causes grief or anxiety or whatever negative emotion it might be. And one of the most powerful aspects of journaling that I've found, and reflecting on myself, my day, whatever it is I want to write about in that moment, it might be my training at the gym even, is you take all of that noise around your estimation of whatever the issue is, and once you start to put it into words on paper, it becomes more objective. It becomes outside of your head. It becomes outside of yourself. And what I've found is sometimes, even halfway through writing the sentence, I'll realize that the way I'm internalizing it in my own mind is not how I'm actually thinking about it or how I should be thinking about it. And once you can read it back to yourself, even 5 seconds later, you start to see the new perspective. And you start to see it from a perspective, at least for me, where I look at that sentence and I think, how will I feel about this in a week's time when I read this back? How will I think about this in a month's time when I'm going back over this journal? And this issue that seems so prudent at the time, this seems like such a big deal, it's going to be nothing, because when I summarize this in 10 words, it's something I can deal with. And I think that's a big piece on resilience as well, and how you can build resilience through that objectivity.
Kind of builds a relationship with yourself. I haven't done it personally, but I'm really interested about it, and kind of the concept of you talking to yourself. Is that weird?
It's not how I do it. I do find it a bit weird when I do that. Like I've never written a letter to myself. Hey Sam, how's it going?
So it's kind of third person?
Mine's a little bit more structured, so it might be like, okay, example of what I might write about when I go to bed at night, because I do this twice daily. So I'll do it before I get to work in the morning.
So this morning?
Yeah. So I'll write about what I will do that day, even if I don't fully internally believe it. If I'm 50% sure, I'll write about it and I'll go, today I'm going to do X, I'm going to do Y, and I'm going to be this type of person in the way that I do it, in the way I conduct myself. And it sets yourself up for that day to expect yourself to encapsulate that in the way you go about it. And even if you don't realize that, right? Like, even if I say, okay, well, I've got a big meeting today and I'm going to absolutely nail it, and I'm going to be so confident, I'm going to know exactly what I'm talking about, and I only get 90% of the way there. When I'm reflecting about that at nighttime, I can look back on what I wrote in the morning, and then I can assess, how did I do against that? What are 3 things that I did really well that encapsulated exactly what I wrote about and promised to myself?
I have read a lot about that being very useful. 2 books that come to mind is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Great book. He talks about that in that book. And then the other one's The Power of Positive Thinking by, I think it's Vincent Norman Peale. And that's a very religious book, but some of the information in it is absolute gold when it comes to the relationship with yourself and self-confidence. Have you seen a massive benefit in your life in terms of stress management, being more confident, being more who you really want to be or who you actually are deep down from it?
It is the single biggest ingredient in all of those things for me, hands down.
So how do you get started? Because it seems like a pretty daunting thing to start.
Pick up a pen, pick up some paper, and just write something.
But what do you write?
It doesn't matter. When we're talking about getting started, and this goes outside of just journaling, this could be any new skill you're picking up. If we're looping back to the photography, right? Picking up the camera taken a few snaps. They're all absolutely terrible, dog water, but it builds momentum. Once you start, you've got that little bit of momentum, and then it's so easy to continue. I think something that has stopped me journaling before, because this is not a habit I've done for my 29 years. I'm 29 now. This is not something I've always done. It's come in cycles. It's been on and off. But what I can say is when I am doing it, I notice objectively an objective improvement in how I assess myself and my circumstances.
So I guess it kind of helps with clarity on what makes you happy then and what your definition of success is. So how's that been shaped and what is that becoming now as you're kind of about to enter your 30s?
Yeah, well, I think the secret ingredient in that is the gratitude that it can bring. It can help you recognize the small moments or the small victories, which might not feel big in the moment or feel important. But when you're putting that to paper at the end of the day, you can be grateful for the smallest little things.
And now on this topic of kind of being 29 and about to enter your 30s, does that freak you out a little bit that your 20s has kind of breezed past, or do you think it's taken forever? Where are you standing right now with reminiscing on the past 10 years?
I think I'm ready. I think I was coming up, 25, 26, 27, you start to look nervously, I'd say over your shoulder, but you look nervously ahead. You're like, oh, 30, that's a big number. It's a huge number. But reflecting back on particularly how transient my life has been, how many different situations I've found myself in, my 20s seemed so long. It hasn't been quick. A lot of people say that, oh, your 20s fly by. I don't feel that way because I can think back to, when I was 21, I was in a totally different situation to when I was in 24. 24 versus 27, totally different. And now 29 now and then going into my 30s is an entirely different situation again. So it almost feels like I've lived 4 or 5 different lives in that time period. But then now as we get into that period of stability, let's call it, I'm ready. I'm ready to be 30 and handle that.
So how would you define progress in your life?
Self-acceptance is atop that list. Definitely.
Like having progress in learning to be more self-accepting of where you are, or because like in terms of goals moving forwards, are you focusing on the bigger goals, or are you purely focusing on the day-to-day and knowing if you do the day-to-day right, you will get to the person you want to become?
Yes. Every day you have to take it on as it comes. For me, having too much of a long-term focus can make things seem harder than they need to be. And that puts you at risk of losing momentum. When it's day to day, when you're looking and reflecting on simply what was happening yesterday and then how you can improve on that today, that's the biggest driver. It's important to have long-term vision and planning and goals, of course, because that gives you something to work towards and to visualize as well, which is another core component of that, I suppose. But simply reflecting on how you were as a human being on this day versus the last day is the best measure of success. Because for me, being able to reflect on that in the longer term, when I'm looking back on my journal from a year ago, that's when you can start to see that long-term progress and build that internal sense of progress. But in order to make the progress, you just one step at a time. That's how you got to take it.
And I guess journaling really helps break that down as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, all you have to write about on that page is that day. You're not planning ahead what's happening next week. You're not thinking about what happened last month. It's how was I performing as a human being today? What did I do well? What can I do better tomorrow?
What type of human being do you want to be?
That is an excellent question.
Thank you.
I want to be the type of human being that can look at myself and be proud. I don't think it needs to be more than that.
All right. Well, there's been a lot of nuggets of wisdom in here. And I guess this is leading on the back of that question. Your tombstone. Everyone has a tombstone, right? And everyone has one phrase they can put in their tombstone on how they can be remembered. What would your one phrase be?
This is I've said this for you, but this is a very interesting question because I've been reflecting on this for months now. The idea of memento mori, remember you will die. And this is a powerful visualization tool, which I guess allows you to put yourself in that place of how do I want to be remembered? And then the extension of that is
who you were.
Yeah, who you were and how you can communicate that or how you want to come across to other people in order to be remembered that way. So there's almost two elements to it. It's like there's that sense of self and your own measurement of your intentions and your goals. And all of that goes away when you die. Other than what you've shared with other people and the way you've come across to the world, it's all gone. It's all in here.
So what's your tombstone going to say?
Well, the thing is, I don't have an answer yet. I've been reflecting on this for months. I don't know.
Really?
Really.
But, okay, I've thought about this as well, right? And I've thought of all the different like clever phases or like a cool phase that could really sum it up for how people like. But I know deep down there's just the one phrase that like just makes sense to me, that like even though it makes sense to me, it doesn't make sense to be on a tombstone and like seems like the least cool, like the most generic. But to me, it's like you've got that kind of deep down feeling that that's it, that's actually what it is. And no matter how much you try and skate around it, there is no better phrase for it. And mine is, and I'll share this now, first time, was a good person. I can't think of something better than that. Like at the end of the day, that's the most important thing to me, is was a good person.
What does that mean to you?
I guess it means that on a day-to-day basis, I'm nice to people, I'm nice to myself, I'm remembered for those things. And I guess that's where, for me, like being content and being happy comes from. It's like when I do the right things, because you always get the really like something's wrong feeling when you're doing something wrong. You get the gut feeling that it's not right. And the feeling when you're doing the right thing is like, it's just, it's euphoric. Like it's honestly like the best thing. It's like, oh, I just did that. And like simple as like paying for your car bay as opposed to like parking somewhere, you're not going to get a ticket for the day, and like being happy, like in the morning, you're like, okay, I've parked here. This is good.
Put that on the tombstone.
I got my Transperth parking bay at Dalgleish. I didn't have to park on the side street where I could get a fine. Or the other day, and I'm not doing this to toot my own horn, when I went to Woolies and did my grocery shop, gave some fruit to the homeless person out the front on my way out. And like, it just feels good to do that sort of thing. Like being a good person with yourself, it's not just about other people, but with yourself as well is really important. But doing that and being remembered for that, I think, is what's most important to me.
I suppose an offshoot of that, he stuck by his values.
Who, me?
Well, just on one's tombstone, I think.
As a tombstone. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, you as well.
A man of his word.
Exactly. Right? Your word is your bond. I know you're a man of your word, so maybe that could be an inspiration. A runner-up for the tombstone.
I think I'm going to have to settle with was a good person. If I was a good person, if I finish my life being a good person, I think I can have was a good person. If I do some bad things when I'm older, maybe not. But I'm not planning to, obviously.
I suppose that's true, but it can mean a different thing to the reader, the person reading the tombstone, the person making the tombstone. Campbell being a good person can mean something totally different to them than what it might mean to you.
Well, yeah, it is pretty broad, eh? Maybe I should find something niche, but I can't pin it down nicher than that.
Well, you can't be too specific on a tombstone because I think that it's cost by the letter, so you got to keep it succinct.
Yeah, it's not a lot of reading room there. You got a title character limit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 30 characters. In TLDR, it was a good person. I think that's cost effective.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about while you're here? Anything else in general that you think is important to share?
I already touched on it, but gratitude. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful you invited me.
Well, I'm very grateful you've come on and given your time on a weekend.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking interest. I hope that some of this has been insightful for the listeners, the dear listeners of the Crooked Smile podcast.
Look, if you're listening right now, that's great. But at the end of the day, it's insightful to me, and that's what matters, because that's why I'm doing this.
That's great.
So I'd just like to say thank you very much for coming on. I've taken a lot away from this conversation in general, and I'm not sure if I'm quite ready yet, but I kind of want to do journaling in the future. It's just kind of like making that jump. And then it's also like having the time to do it, because I'm very like trying to optimize my day-to-day basis with what I'm doing. And it's like I'm struggling to even get like a consistent hour a day to read. It's like until I can get that, it's like, you know what I mean?
I do, but I mean, talk to me about that. Why do you feel you don't have the time for journaling?
Because I've got so many things I'm doing and I'm trying to cram into the 24 hours. I wish there was more hours in a day like everyone else, but I feel like until I can master what I've got going on now consistently, I can then go to the next level. Like I can't just try and do a bunch of new things all at once. I got to do it progressively, one at a time, and incorporate them into my life, get it down pat, and then go to the next thing. And until I don't really see the purpose in taking on more stuff, because I'm not going to do it properly. I'm the type of person that when I do something, I want to do it properly. I don't want to half-ass it.
I suppose that's true, and that's respectable, and I think that speaks a lot about the type of person you are. But sometimes it's important to just start, no matter how messy it is. Like I said, you pick up the pen, you pick up the paper, you write whatever the hell's on your mind, and it doesn't have to take an hour. I would encourage you to just start. And we're talking about habits and habit literature. Are you familiar with habit stacking?
Yes.
Of course. So try some habit stacking for it. Can you think of something that would make sense to pair with?
It would have to be in the evenings. I wouldn't get to it in the mornings, but it would maybe be like I have my shower and do all that stuff and then write 2 pages or something like that.
Why's it got to be 2 pages, Campbell?
Like start small. You got to start small.
That's not small.
I don't have the time, Sam. I got to make the time, but then it gets into my reading time, and that's something I really enjoy doing before I go to bed because it helps me sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's what do I give for it? Because I'm pretty good now with not being on social media. Like I have another phone that has all my socials on it and it stays in my cupboard. Like I only go on it to post stuff for the pod or like to check messages like once a day, like once every 2 days. And I've noticed it is the best thing for my mental health. Like being off my phone not only gives me so much more time, because you don't realize how much time you spend scrolling, but it gives me so much more time for my own thoughts. And then from that, my mental health is so much better as a result.
I couldn't agree more. It's actually something I've been experimenting with lately. Just if I'm going out on errands, I'll just leave my phone behind at home. If I'm going to Woolies in the supermarket,
I'm not quite
not a fan?
there yet.
No?
I'm not saying I'm not a fan. I'm not quite there yet,
Okay.
There's levels to this, Sam.
So yours more of a controlled, conscious effort to not pick it up as opposed to leave it behind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I still have my other phone with me, like to call people.
Other phone.
I just said I got 2 phones.
Okay.
Like one phone's got all the socials and the pod stuff on it.
Yeah,
That's the one that sits in the cupboard. And then I got my day-to-day phone, like with my number on it for texting people, like actual communications. Like I'm trying to keep my phone more for proper communications as opposed to just social media for the sake of social media. So I've still got like Messenger, like text, WhatsApp, all on my main phone, but it's like Instagram, the TikTok for the pod, and then anything like that is all on the other phone.
Are you familiar with the dumb phone phenomenon?
Everyone going back to their Nokias.
Yeah, or the flip phone.
Everyone going to Nokias for the first time. I had a Nokia back in the day. I've already been there. I played that Snake game.
Oh, yeah. When was this? What sort of age would you have been?
12, 13, 14. I didn't get my first iPhone probably until 15, 16. 15, because I remember having Snapchat at 15.
Yeah.
When it was like
dangerous.
Swipe up, to be honest.
Yeah. A dangerous app in the hands of 15-year-olds, but the absolute target market of something like that for sure. But the dumb phone concept is an interesting one to me, and I haven't quite gone that far either, I'll be honest. But there are elements that you can remove from even your smartphone to get a little bit closer to that. So something I've been experimenting with, particularly at nighttime, is the grayscale feature of the phone.
Yeah,
so
I have seen that. Yeah.
I'll have that on a preset for a set amount of time where, it kicks in at, I think it's 8:15 or something, goes grayscale. And there's no app control, there's no blocking, there's no nothing. Everything's just less interesting. It's less engaging. My brain's just like, I don't want to look at this. And
See, I think that is really useful, but I'm at the point where like it hits 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., whenever I'm finishing what I'm doing for the day, I put everything down. I go have a shower, like do all my hygiene stuff, brush my teeth, and then I'm in bed reading, going to bed. I'm not on my phone again for the rest of the night. So just purely not having that activity, like with you, because I was listening to Modern Wisdom with, I think it's Dr. Matt Walker or Matt Walker, I think, or Alan Walker, but he's like the #1 guy for sleep in the world, like the guru of like sleep, like the #1 expert everyone goes to. And he was saying it's not so much the blue light, like yes, that's important for your sleep and your circadian rhythm and all of that, but it's the activity in your brain as a result, and the activity in your brain from scrolling or like doing work late at night makes it so much harder for you to fall asleep and get into deep sleep faster. Whereas if you're doing something like reading where it slows down the activity in your brain, it's not engaging, it's not frying your dopamine, that's what makes it easier to go to sleep. So I kind of just try and keep my phone away from me.
Spot on. The book is not demanding your attention in the same way. It's steady, it's reassuring, it's always there. You know?
And I always feel good after reading. I can't quite explain it. Even if I'm reading fiction, I always feel good after reading. Like if I spend 2 hours on my phone, I feel like the worst person in the world. I feel like I've wasted 2 hours of my life. And I know it's hard on myself, but it's like, I feel like I had so many things to do that I could have done, but instead I've spent it on my phone, and now I'm just in a shit mood in general. Whereas if I read, not only am I like, most of the time I'm reading nonfiction and I'm learning from it, but not only is that a case, but it's like, I just have this sort of buzz of like, not only have I achieved something that's like delayed gratification, sitting there forcing myself to read, like sometimes I don't enjoy reading as much, but then like afterwards I just feel so good about myself. Like it's like a well done, you did something right.
Well, it's hard. It's not glamorous. The brain's not like, hey, yeah, I want to start reading.
My brain's like fried for reading now from all these like dopamine scrolls on social media. Everything in your life's like targeted for attention, and reading's like slow down, read every line, pay attention to every single word so you know what's happening.
Yeah, well, it's fleeting. That's absolutely spot on. With reading, it's slow, it keeps your attention, it maintains your attention, and you learn from it. Even when it's fiction, you recall the narrative, you can conceptualize this journey the characters are on, their conversations, whatever. What I've noticed, and I don't have most social medias. I barely spend any time on my phone. If so, it's on Messenger. Reddit's my basically only thing, like TikTok, Instagram, none of that makes sense to me at all, so I don't do it. But if I talk to my girlfriend's sister, for example, and she's been on her phone on TikTok for 2.5 hours, let's say, huge amount of time. That's a movie length of time to absorb stuff.
So like a Lord of the Rings non-extended edition version.
Yeah, and nowhere near the level of quality of that. But if I say to her, tell me 5 different videos you watched in that time, she can't recall it.
Yeah.
She can probably tell me 2.
It's like goldfish memory.
Yeah, it is. It's like, it's that spike of attention. Oh, this is interesting. What's the next interesting thing?
I reckon that's transferable into the other areas of your life. It's not just with scrolling then. That affects your memory with other things as well. Like your short recall on conversations you've had with people and stuff. Like back in the day when I was on social media 6 hours a day, I reckon on my phone, like I couldn't remember who I'd told what in terms of conversation. Whereas now, like if I see someone, I know the last conversation I've had with them, I'm so much more switched on and engaged with that person and that relationship with that person.
Absolutely, yeah. It's ties back. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there. Sorry, could you repeat that? Sorry, Campbell.
What did I say? Oh no, we're doing it right now. We're doing it right now.
I know we are. Yeah, look how fried our brains are.
It increases your relationship with people because you're able to talk to them more and be more present and remember everything, all your interactions with them.
No, completely lost it. Sorry.
You can just agree with me.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. I absolutely do. I think, yeah, reflecting on that, the accessibility of information, I think, plays a part in that. How
such a double-edged sword, hey?
Yeah, but why would you bother memorizing some key bit of information for life? Like, let's say some scientific story or theory or whatever. Like, it's interesting to you, you absorb it. back in the day, you might learn that at the local library and hold on to that for many years. You've taken the time to read it and absorb it and digest it and think on it. But now, I might see that fact on Reddit or online, maybe on TikTok. I don't know how it works there, but I know that information is always going to be there, and I can just type in a simple search result and it's right in front of me again. So why would I bother internalizing that? And I think that's extended beyond information now. I get that sense. So that goes to relationships as well. Why would you remember what someone said about their holiday when you can just jump in the chat and look at it at any time?
And you think it's bad?
I think it's different. I don't know if it's bad. I think we as humans are struggling to adapt to it. And I think that's, in a way, why it's bad. We can't emotionally process that. We're not used to it. It's all happened so fast. It's not even 20 years ago that we didn't have any smartphones, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy to think like the snowball effect that we're having right now, like where AI, for example, is going to be in 5 years, let alone 10. Like, you know, Terminator, Skynet, you know, in the movie, it's based for like 2029. So we're actually on track for the Terminator, if you think about it.
Okay, we've got 4 years to make the most of it then.
So how would you spend that 4 years?
Being grateful for what exists beyond the annihilation. If I knew that was coming, I think all the little moments would be much more important. And you know what? That in and of itself is a reflection, because even not knowing about a nuclear Armageddon in 2029, which is certain, that shouldn't influence how grateful we are for the little moments.
And it shouldn't have to influence how you live on a day-to-day basis, because you should already be living that way.
Exactly, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, never mind in 2029. And so regardless of how certain that outcome is, that's where the appreciation of everyday life comes. It's the little moments like, you know, this seems silly, but I was thinking this exact thought when I stepped outside and I was waiting for my girlfriend to come out. And I just had maybe 1 minute to wait in the garden. And I was thinking, this is so boring of a moment, but I want to find something about this that I can be grateful for. And so I looked around. I didn't really see anything. It's quite dark in the garden. I looked up. The first thing I saw was a shooting star. It lasted probably 2 to 3 seconds. It's not the biggest one I've ever seen, but that seemed like a sign. And you know what? Even if I hadn't have seen that shooting star, I still think I would have been grateful for that moment, just looking up at the sky.
Well, Sam, thank you very much for this time. Speaking of gratitude, I'm very grateful for you to have come on and share all this with me. And I'm sure we'll have to do it again in the future, because I'm sure as you keep going on this path that you're going on, life's only going to get even more interesting and even more worth sharing. So I just want to say I appreciate your time and thanks very much.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to have been here. Thank you for inviting me on, and I'll have to come back to you on what my tombstone reflection is.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Thank you.
And I can never ever. If you get lost, I press the rewind so you don't see now. I know I can tell that you a winner. I'm making key lime cause I was living in the backseat till you begged me. All my niggas never playing games like we bad street. When she's talking, feel like poetry in motion, and I feel like I'm chosen. When she look at me, I'm getting lost up in that ocean. Everywhere emotion, they ain't got a notion. I wanna tell them.